Welcome to the Success Ascent. My name is Pat Mancuso, the creator and host of our show. Today we welcome Stormie Andrews, who is the founder of Yokel Local. He's also an award-winning author, and he's created the world's best buyer persona system. In our episode today, Stormie shares with us some great tips. First, he talks about once you think you know something, you know nothing. He says, are you willing to gamble on yourself? He says it's important to keep commitments to yourself. It's also important to hire a business coach sooner than you think. And the last thing he talked about is what are digital employees? I know you're going to enjoy the episode today, so on to the ascent. Welcome to the Success Ascent. My name is Pat Mancuso, the creator and host of our show, and I am excited you are here today with us. And we have an amazing guest who I know is going to rock our world. So let me tell you a little bit about Stormie Andrews. So Stormie is the founder of Yokel Local. He's an award-winning author, and he's also co-authored a book, Power of the Platform, Speakers on Success, with none other than Jack Canfield, Tracy, and Les Brown. In 2020, and the reason that I'm excited to talk with him today is he released the book, The World's Best Buyer Persona System, and we're going to talk about that on our show today, which is the foundational first step to outsmarting your competition, and we all want to outsmart our competition. That's for darn sure. The system was so effective, he was recognized by Intercon as one of the top 50 tech visionaries in the world. He is a licensed practitioner of neuro-linguistic programming, NLP, for those of you that do the acronyms. Top 50 tech visionary is named by Intercom, award-winning author, Forbes contributor, HubSpot contributor. Stormie, I'm not sure how many other things you can have behind you. HubSpot certified trainer, master graduate of Rapport Leadership International, and recipient of Member of the Year Award of the American Marketers Association. So I think you know marketing. And his agency is the first and only HubSpot Platinum Agency Solutions partner in Nevada. So Stormie, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Pat. I am so excited to be here, not only with you, but with your audience. I'm thrilled to be here.
Well, and we're excited to have you and grateful to have you. So Stormie, let's start off. You know this is coming. I go, okay, that's Stormie on paper. And I always like to have some fun with our guests and say, tell us something about Stormie that's not on paper.
Well, that's not on paper. I'm going to share something with you that just happened this past weekend. Myself and my fiance had a scheduled trip to Costa Rica, and we were rained out. So we decided to do a staycation here in Las Vegas. And there's a show that we went to, and that show is called Absence. And they pulled two couples on stage, and I had to dance for my fiance, and we won. So we had the crowd going crazy. We did apparently such a good job that people were asking for our autographs, and they thought we were shills for the show. So we crushed it.
I love it. I love it. I could just see it now on Las Vegas Boulevard. The new show, the new entertainers. I love it. We'll push all those entertainers aside. So Stormie, we're going to talk about the marketing side of business and help entrepreneurs. And yet I always want to talk about your journey of success, because that's part of what our show is about, like talking about entrepreneurs and their journey of success. So when did you kind of feel like you were an entrepreneur? Like, was there a moment in time? Was there an event? Like, where did this all start?
Well, it's interesting. I felt like an entrepreneur when I was in grade school, and I'm sure many entrepreneurs felt the same way. I was the guy that was selling bubble gum in the lockers and all sorts of crazy ventures throughout grade school. Well, I noticed that, all of my ventures would last for a certain amount of time, and they would eventually fall apart. I graduated, and throughout college, I had different side gigs and hustles of installing car alarms and stereos, and if you can name it, I probably did it and attempted to start a business on it. And lots of successes. Well, you know what? In the early stages, lots of failures, but I really don't consider them failures. They were just an incredible amount of learning experiences. I wasn't the guy that was going to sit there and hold a job and not do anything else. That just didn't work for me. So 11 years ago, my business partner and myself decided to start Yokel Local, and it was accumulation of all of those other experiments of going into business that have been so valuable in regard to having Yokel Local be around for over a decade.
Yeah, that's pretty cool, particularly in the times, the economic times we've gone through. So that's amazing. And the startup of businesses, there's a high failure rate. So congratulations to you guys. So let's, what's common, what I love that you said is many times the entrepreneurs we have on the show go back to, high school, childhood, and there's always something that kind of spurred that entrepreneurship. So let me ask you this. Every entrepreneur has a time, a ceiling that they hit that really jumps out at them, that they ultimately broke through, and yet it was one of those challenging times. What was one of the most challenging times for you as an entrepreneur in the ceiling that you had to break through so far?
Yeah, you know what? Probably the toughest and most stressful thing that happened early on when we started Yokel Local. I took my savings to start Yokel Local, and in very short order, we ran out of money. We were just out of money. We had a lot more money going out than money coming in. And the only source that we had for revenue was the savings that I had set aside for my two boys, their college tuition. And I had to make a very difficult choice: either gamble on myself or go get a job. And I had to go to my ex-wife. To her credit, I went to her and I'm like, hey, listen, I either got to shut down Yokel Local or I need to raise the college tuition funds. And I'm pretty confident. I know I've got a 2-year window that I can make that money up and get those funds back to where they were. And it was very, very stressful because it just wasn't about the business. It was my kids' future. And that was just an incredible gamble. It knocked me on my teeth. There were times where I thought we were going to fall flat on our face, but fortunately we were able to prevail. And fortunately we did it because it just took a little bit longer to get that level of revenue and success that we needed to be a sustainable business. Yeah. And it was that little extra, that additional funding that was required. One thing I knew I didn't want to do was get outside investors. I work for other companies in the world of corporate America. And when the investors come in, it's been my experience that it's less about the customer and it's more about the profit. And those relationships, at least the ones that I experienced, I didn't want to be a part of. So I had always been hesitant and resistant to bring in outside investors. I figured we'd bootstrap it.
Well, Stormie, and I love that, that story. And what I know as a consultant and as a coach is, there was a lot of seriousness to what you did. I mean, in fact, you basically burned the boats there, right? You knew that if you didn't make this work, the consequences of that. And sometimes that's what it takes for entrepreneurs, right? They need that moment of truth, if you may, as I call it, where they got to go, okay, now I got to get really serious. Not that you weren't serious before, but it's kind of like you sometimes play entrepreneur and also now I got to get real serious. So let me ask you another question. In your journey, what have you found in being an owner, an entrepreneur, a thought leader? What have you found that if you knew back when you started, you would have done sooner, you'd be farther along? Like, was there one thing that, you're like, ooh, I found that out later. I wish I would have known it sooner?
Yeah, you know what? I probably would have hired a business coach right off the bat. I would have had a more substantial business plan. When we started the business, we bootstrap it. We just figured, hey, we're two smart individuals. We can do this and nobody can really tell us what to do. We've got this. And I don't know, 5 or 6 years ago, whatever the time frame may have been when we hired a business coach, having that person on the outside of the glass looking in, giving solid advice and not really being concerned about our feelings. And sometimes those meetings, we go into them, we're scared, we're, intimidated because he's going to say some things that we just don't want to hear, but it's the truth. And our business coach has helped us make far superior decisions than we would have made on our own. And just having that outside counsel has been incredibly important. So that's one of the things that we were to go back to the beginning. I would hire the business coach at the beginning because he probably would have required that we had a more substantial business plan and a little less willy-nilly and someone to hold us accountable from the very beginning. We wasted a lot of time, energy, effort, and money by not having him around.
Well, and you know what, Stormie, interesting again, almost common with the entrepreneurs I've interviewed over the last year plus, two things. I wish I'd hired leverage sooner, and I wish I had a coach and a mentor sooner. So very common, nothing surprising there as a coach and as a consultant. So one last question, then we're going to shift over to the buyer persona conversation. If you were talking with a 21-year-old version of yourself who was going to be an entrepreneur, what advice would you give them?
To the 20-year-old version of myself is the fact that not only do you not know everything, you know nothing. And once you feel like you know everything, that's just confirmation that you know nothing. listen to the people that have come before you, seek out their advice, seek out their mentorship, seek out their knowledge, because if you find the right people, they will be there to help you. Be humble about it. And that's the one thing that I would absolutely 100% share with my 20-year-old self is you don't know anything, and be proud of that. You put yourself in rooms with people that do know something and continuously learn.
Yeah.
And that would be the number one advice I'd give myself.
Great title of the book. You don't know Jack, and if you think you know Jack, you don't know Jack. I love that.
Absolutely.
I love that. I think I'm going to get that title and write that book. Okay, so let's shift gears. You wrote this book, The World's Best Buyer Persona System, and you hear everybody talking about, you need to know your customer avatar. You need to, make sure that you develop your niche. And yet when we talked in the beginning, you've actually nailed this in this book. And so talk about first, where did this idea start?
So it's interesting. Going back to my introduction, you had mentioned that I co-authored a book with Jack Canfield, Brian Tracy, Les Brown. Well, the chapter that I wrote, that I contributed, was about effective communication techniques. I had a very successful career in sales. And it wasn't because I was a better salesperson. I was just better at getting into rapport with a wide variety of people, regardless of their background, their belief systems. We would just get into rapport and they would want to do business with me. Well, then the world started changing and started going digital. And one of the things that I noticed is that these digital assets were lousy at getting into rapport with people, because these digital assets, and what I mean by digital assets, whether that's your website or social media postings and so forth, there were a lot of factual information about the company and information that your customer, your potential prospects on the other side were just hearing noise, blah, 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 just another person talking about themselves. And I struggled with it, being able to connect on an emotional level with the digital asset. So I wanted to take what I was doing in the real world, the belly-to-belly communication, and I worked on it for years. How could we make digital assets have a greater level of getting into rapport with clients? And that's how the World's Best Buyer Persona System was built. It was taking that real-world scenario and plugging the right amount of information into your content. So this way you're just increasing the likelihood of your digital assets getting into rapport so they can be a more effective employee for you.
So I'm going to ask you this question so you talked about businesses thinking of their their folks as digital employees. Talk more about that.
Yeah, let's think about a traditional employee, right? With the traditional employee, you've got payroll, you've got benefits, you've got sick days, you've got all this other this minutia associated with your typical employees.
Right.
And with that being said, you spend a lot of time, energy, and effort training them, having employee manuals, giving them the resources that they need, so at least they have the opportunity of succeeding. But when it comes to your website, right, that is a very, very important employee. Oftentimes, it's the first employee that someone will come across when they're considering your brand, the very first one. So it needs to be a good ambassador of your brand. Also, when they want to start communicating with your brand, it starts with your website in many cases. So it needs to be a great spokesperson. It needs to be a good salesperson. It needs to be empathetic to your ideal prospects and customers. Unfortunately, most businesses haven't thought of their websites in that regard. They think of their websites as nothing more than a digital billboard. And then they wonder, why isn't my website doing a better job? I hear all of these success stories about people making millions or billions of dollars from their website, and mine is doing absolutely nothing. Well, maybe, just maybe, you haven't trained your website. So is it the website's fault that it's not doing what it should be doing? Or is it your fault because you haven't given your website the tools and the resources that it needs to effectively communicate with your most ideal prospects?
So, it's funny because, as a consultant, we have a proprietary hiring system, and a part of one of the modules is what we call the 30, 60, 90-day training. And when you said training the website, I'm going, we don't have that in our consulting system. We don't train the website. I love that thinking. I love it. So let's talk about some of the strategies within the buyer persona system. What could you share with our listeners? Just things right now that they could, take away from a thinking perspective and an application perspective to start increasing their results, if you may, in their business.
Yeah. So one of the things that we talk about in the World's Best Buyer Persona System, using the book as a resource or not, is how much energy and effort have you really put into the pain points that your potential prospects are going through as it pertains to your goods and services. What led them on this journey? How did they get here? What are their action beliefs? What are their inaction beliefs? Meaning that as it pertains to the solution that you're bringing to the world, if they take action, you may have a belief as, the company, the belief of the value that your product or goods or service brings to the world. But oftentimes there's a disconnect because the belief of your ideal prospects may not be in alignment. Understanding what their belief system is extremely important if they were to take action. Also, understanding what their belief system is if they don't take action is extremely important. And if you haven't even gone through an exercise with that type of step, how are you going to create messaging on your website that can empathize with them? Have you considered the noise that's in the marketplace? What else are they seeing out there in the world as it pertains to the solution that you bring to the market? What are they being told, right?
Right.
Because chances are they may not only be speaking to Google, they may be speaking to friends and family and colleagues. And usually there's two camps there. There's a half glass full camp and a half glass empty camp. Have you considered what the people who they trust, have you considered what they're telling them? What are they doing about it, right? Are they even searching on Google for you as a solution?
Right.
Good idea to know. Maybe Google's not a place that you should be. Oftentimes what I find is that those two simple exercises, and the world's best buyer persona system goes through a series of exercises to help you craft messaging to better understand who your prospect is throughout their buyer's journey, from their awareness stage, consideration stage, and decision stage. So this way you can not only be a resource, but you can build trust as they are progressing along their journey. And oftentimes what we find is if you do that really, really good, you put yourself in a position to where the prospects are seeking you out before your competitors even know that they exist. That's a great position to be in.
So, Stormie, I mean, I talk with a lot of business owners, small to medium-sized businesses. And honestly, a lot of them feel like, and this is probably because they don't have somebody like you in their court, but they feel like they don't even know where to start. Like they don't even know, should I run an ad? Should I not run an ad? And so, like, let's say I come to you today and I've got this great business concept and maybe my website needs some help, as they all do, I'm sure. Where do you get me to start thinking? Like, where's the first place I should go or start in my thinking from your perspective?
So here you go. If you're listening to this right now, I'm going to give you access to a marketing wheel. It's a free exercise. And the URL is outsmarttools.com. But let me tell you about this exercise. It's right here on the bottom of the screen. The way I look at marketing, because marketing and advertising can be very intimidating. There are many areas that you can approach, and it's just this massive monstrosity. And like you said, people don't know where to start. But this marketing wheel exercise helps you break your marketing down into 8 different areas. And then I have you grade yourself. So this way you're basically giving yourself a grade of an A, B, C, D, or an F. And we look at 8 different areas of your marketing, and I'll just quickly go over them. We look at your awareness. Are you performing there? Are people aware of your brand when they're thinking of your goods and services? And then I have you rate yourself on engagement, and then lead generation, conversion optimization. Wow. What happens once someone decides to do business with you? I have you rate yourself in regards to a customer ladder, reviews, and then referrals. And then once you look at the results of that success wheel or marketing wheel, once you look at your results, it's designed to give you clarity where you can look at your strengths and weaknesses. And if you have an area that is weak and in any of those 8 areas, it gives you clarity in regards to what you should be focused on. And then once you focus on it, you only need to do 3 things. Come up with a plan. What's your plan of action? And then come up with how your definition of success. So if you've given yourself a D, what would a C look like? What do you have to change and modify? And then what tools and tactics are you going to use? Once you put that trifecta of elements in place, that's a singular thing that you need to focus on. You can get a level of success. And then what happens, you worry about the next element on the marketing wheel. And the tool that you have access to, I'm going to walk you through those exercises with videos that I recorded for you. And what I have found for most people is that gives them a level of clarity that they've never had before. And it gives them a level of confidence where they feel, or that where you should be able to feel that you are in a better shape to take the next steps forward.
That makes sense. And thank you so much for sharing that tool with our listeners. And we'll post that with the recording and everything. So I love this. I want to ask you this question. How can your business outsmart your competition when your competition has bigger budgets? I love that. So talk to us about that.
Yeah, and that's where the world's best buyer persona system comes in. The one commonality that I find across from one business to another is that there hasn't been enough energy and effort put into their ideal prospects, their pain points, their emotions, their weaknesses. You see, when businesses approach me and they're like, "Hey, Stormie, I want to retain your services because I want to outsell, I want to outgrow." I'm like, okay, let's back up just a moment. We can do that. One route we can go is outspend everyone in the market. We will, get some traction there. Don't know how profitable it will be, but we can certainly outspend. But I think a much better route is to outsmart. And to outsmart and the way to outsmart is understanding your ideal prospect throughout their buyer's journey. And let me say that again, having a greater understanding of your ideal prospect throughout their journey, whether it's the awareness stage, when they're just aware that they may have a potential problem happening, the consideration stage where they're considering the various alternatives to you, and then the decision stage between you and your competitors. The greater your understanding is, and the greater you're able to take that understanding and put it to your digital assets, it puts you in a position where you're able to outsmart because now you're fishing upstream.
Yeah, I mean, it makes so much sense. It makes so much sense. The one thing I also heard you say, which I really loved when it came to the your ideal client, is it's not just the problem you solve, it's the pain that if it's not solved. And I don't think we think enough about that, right? We just think about the pain that we solve. So one last question before we get to talking about some great advice you've always gotten. Talk to us about post-COVID. Like, what are you sharing with businesses around what you do with the post-COVID world?
Well, it's interesting. When COVID hit, at Yokel Local, we're located here in Las Vegas. And one of the things that we had to do, fortunately, we had the world's best buyer persona system, is when COVID hit during the course of a week, we had a lot of our clients. The phone was just ringing. Hey, we need to pause our services. We need to cancel our services. Where our revenue went down 63% in the course of that week. And we were like, oh no, it was a bad word moment for us. And it got to the point we were just laughing about it. We quickly went back to our persona and we looked at how the world had shifted. So we rebuilt new personas based on the pain points, the issues, the struggles. If the world shifted, we realized that there is a strong possibility that our ideal client has shifted.
So let's do this. Let's kind of put a ribbon on this. So would there be one final thought you would share as we kind of leave our listeners today? One final thought that you would share, in what you do as a business owner, entrepreneur?
Yeah, absolutely. Regardless, going back to the advice I would give myself as a 20-year-old, sometimes I find myself thinking, I know, and it's right then is when I start to question, and I now embrace the fact that maybe I just don't know, and I look for individuals that have done it, that have come before me, and I seek their counsel. I've been extremely blessed having just an incredible resource of people, and oftentimes, it's that advice and that other perspective that I get sends me on a much better path than I would have gone on my own.
Yeah, I love that. Well, and Stormie, this conversation today is related to just what you said. We were put in contact with somebody who did one of our prior shows, and they said, you need to talk to Stormie. He'll knock it out of the park, and he'll share some great things. And so I'm just so glad that you were able to join us today and that they made the intro. So, ladies and gentlemen, I want to close out our show today. First, you can go to www.patmancuso.com/podcast. You can go, it will be right there. You can listen to any of our episodes there, as well as go to your favorite source where you get your podcast. Please subscribe, leave us some ratings. Those are always good. And please share our show. We know it's having an impact. We love doing it. And we so appreciate all of our guests' time and what they bring to the table. So, Stormie, thanks so much for being here today. I appreciate it. And I love how you responded to the little technology glitch. That's always fun.
I just want to say one last thing. On October 30th, my book came out in Audible, and I added a lot more information to the Audible version.
Oh, very
so much
cool.
more. So I've doubled the amount of content. So I would highly recommend you check out the Audible.
Yeah.
It's an incredible.
Well, thank you so much for sharing it. Oh my gosh, what a great added value. That's the benefit of Audible, if you may. So, Stormie, thanks so much. Appreciate it. Everybody, ladies and gentlemen, as I end every show, Be happy, be safe, be healthy until the next time we talk. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye, Stormie.
Bye-bye. Thanks.
If you've not yet subscribed, please go to your favorite podcast source and subscribe to The Success Ascent, or simply go to www.thesuccessascent, and that's ASCENT.com, thesuccessascent.com. Thanks so much for joining us today. We look forward to catching you on the next Ascent.